At my sister's funeral, I thought grief would be the worst thing I'd feel that day. I was wrong. My husband stepped away from me as they lowered her coffin. He didn't look back, not once. And then a woman in black sat beside me, close, too close. "Excuse me, is that your husband?" I nodded, barely breathing. She studied him as if she knew something I didn't. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a cream envelope. My sister's handwriting was on it. I would recognize those crooked letters anywhere. "She asked me to give this to you," the woman whispered. "He must not know." My name is Zarafina Vale, and until that moment, I believed my marriage was solid. Imperfect, maybe, but safe. My sister and I were never truly close. We had a complicated history: jealousy, distance, long silences. But in her final weeks, she held my hand and cried, without ever explaining why. Now I knew. My husband stood by the grave, staring down like a man rehearsing a performance. Not mourning, not shattered, just waiting. The envelope trembled in my hands. I opened it, and the first sentence made the earth tilt beneath me. The letter began with 3 words that hollowed out my chest. "I'm so sorry, not for dying, for him." My sister wrote that she had debated telling me for months, that she couldn't carry it to the grave, that if I was reading this, it meant she hadn't survived long enough to fix what she had broken. Broken. My fingers shook as I read the next line. "Your husband started coming to see me last winter. He said you were distant, that you didn't understand him anymore." Last winter? That was when he had started working late, when he began guarding his phone like it contained state secrets, when he told me I was imagining things. I remembered asking him once, softly, "Are we okay?" He had smiled, kissed my forehead. "You're overthinking again, Zarafina." Overthinking? The letter continued. Details, dates, hotel names, and then something worse. It didn't end because I wanted it to. It ended because I found out why he was really with me. I stopped breathing. Footsteps approached behind me. My husband's voice was low, careful. Who was that woman? I folded the letter before he could see the rest. "Just someone who knew my sister," I said, keeping my voice steady. He studied my face longer than necessary, that soft, calculated gaze I once mistook for concern. "Are you okay?" he asked. That question, the audacity of it. Inside the envelope, my sister had written the truth he thought was buried with her. "He wasn't in love with you, Zarahina. He was looking for something, documents, access. He kept asking about Dad's estate. Our father had died 6 months ago. His assets were tied up in legal review. Properties, investment accounts, a silent stake in a biotech startup no one outside the family knew about. I was the executor, not my husband. Last winter, the timing wasn't romance, it was strategy. And my sister, she had been terminal, vulnerable, alone. I remembered the day she called me crying, saying she felt used. I assumed she meant a failed relationship. I didn't ask for details. God, I didn't ask. My husband touched my elbow lightly. "Let's go home." His thumb brushed my skin, familiar, possessive, and suddenly I realized something colder than betrayal. He didn't know I knew. Not yet. The humiliation didn't happen in private. It happened 3 nights later. At the memorial reception, my husband insisted we host. "Your sister deserves something dignified," he had said. Now I understood. He wanted access to her friends, her colleagues, her lawyer. The living room was full. Soft music, low condolences, expensive wine. And then he made a toast. "To family," he said, his hand resting on my lower back like a brand of loyalty. "To standing by each other through anything. Anything." My phone vibrated in my clutch. Unknown number. It was the woman in black. "Check the email I just sent you, now." I excused myself and stepped into my father's old study. My hands were ice. The email contained screenshots, bank transfers, messages, my husband texting my sister. "Once she finalizes probate, we'll move forward. Just keep her distracted." Another message. You promised I'd get a cut. I'm not risking my marriage for nothing. Risking, not loving, not grieving, using. I walked back into the living room slowly. He was laughing, holding court, playing the devoted widower-in-law. And then I saw it in his hand, my father's estate folder. He wasn't even subtle anymore. That was the moment something inside me went quiet. Not hysterical, not explosive, just cold. Grief turned into clarity. I didn't confront him, I didn't cry, I didn't cause a scene. That's what he would expect, an emotional wife, spiraling, easy to gaslight. Instead, I smiled. I walked up beside him and gently removed the estate folder from his hand. Not tonight, I said softly. His jaw tightened for a half-second. There it was, the real him. That night, after the guests left, he kissed my forehead and said, "We'll get through this together." I almost laughed. When he fell asleep, I unlocked his phone using the code he thought I didn't know. My birthday. The irony. I photographed everything. Messages, transfers, draft agreements, even a half-written email to an attorney discussing asset restructuring post-probate. Then I called my father's lawyer at 6:12 a.m. "I need to amend the executive access protocols," I said calmly. And then I did something even smarter. I rewrote the will. Not illegally, strategically. The execution wasn't dramatic, it was surgical. First, I moved the probate timeline forward. My father's lawyer trusted me. I showed him the screenshots. Carefully curated, enough to raise concern without exposing the full picture yet. Second, I transferred oversight of the biotech stake into a blind trust that required dual family authorization, not spouse, not proxy, bloodline only. Third, I invited my husband to a private estate review dinner at our home. I told him the board wanted transparency. He looked almost relieved. At the table sat 3 people: my father's attorney, the biotech CFO, and, unexpectedly for him, my sister's former financial advisor. He froze for a half-second. I kept my tone gentle. "We're just clarifying everything before distribution." The advisor slid printed records across the table, transfers traced back to shell accounts, messages time-stamped. My husband laughed nervously. "This is ridiculous." The attorney looked at him evenly. Attempted interference with estate assets carries criminal implications. Silence fell like glass shattering. I finally met his eyes. "You said you were risking your marriage for nothing," I said quietly. "You were right." And that was when his confidence cracked. He didn't explode. That would have been easier. Instead, he deflated, like a man watching the scaffolding collapse around a building he thought he owned. "This is a misunderstanding," he said, his voice thin. "Zarafina, tell them." I didn't blink. The attorney spoke calmly. "There's documented intent to manipulate probate distribution, combined with undisclosed financial transfers. This is serious." He turned to me then, not as a partner, but as a last resort. "You wouldn't destroy us over texts." Destroy us, as if I had done something. I didn't destroy anything. You just assumed I'd never read. He tried anger next, accusations that my sister fabricated everything, that the screenshots were misinterpreted. But the CFO placed one final document on the table, a draft proposal from my husband outlining how he planned to assist in reallocating biotech dividends once I signed distribution authority. Signed. I stood up. "Effective immediately, all marital assets are under review," the attorney announced. That was when my husband finally understood. He hadn't been exposed privately, he had been documented and cornered. But the real twist, it wasn't about the money. It was never about the money. 2 days after the dinner, I filed for divorce, quietly, efficiently. But I didn't send the screenshots to the police, not yet. Instead, I mailed a final envelope to his employer. Inside was the proposal he drafted, the one outlining how he intended to leverage insider familial access to influence biotech dividend allocation. Signed. My company had strict ethics policies, very strict.
3 weeks later, he lost his position, not because I screamed, not because I exposed everything publicly, but because he had written his own ambition in ink. He showed up to my door once, no anger this time, just desperation. "You ruined my life." I looked at him carefully, the man who once told me I overthought everything. "No," I said softly, "you miscalculated." The surprising part, my sister hadn't written the letter out of guilt. She had attached evidence before she died. She knew I wouldn't collapse. She knew I would calculate. In her final line, she wrote, "You always see the pattern eventually." She was right. I folded the letter one last time, and for the first time since her funeral, I felt steady.